Hello and welcome back to the Small Print Podcast with your host Elise. I blog at roulettereader.wordpress.com.
I'm Dawn and I blog at bangbangbookblog.com.
And today we bring you our review of The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. This book is due out in June. What's the exact publishing date? I don't have that in front of me.
It is, I got it, June 27th.
All right.
So a couple weeks.
Yes. This is basically like being promoted as kind of like a gay road trip across 18th century Europe with pirates and a bunch of other fun stuff. Let's get to it.
All right. So the synopsis is Henry Montague is a screw-up. He's kicked out of his school for gambling and illicit activities with boys, and his father is fed up. As a punishment, he's sending Henry's sister, and Henry's best friend on a tour of 18th century Europe. During this time, Henry's father hopes he gets out all his jollies so he can come home and run the family business.
Bam.
Okay. So, are we going to do... We never do the right...
Well, we always do likes and dislikes, but we switch it up based on, like, how much we have to say about it. Why don't we start with our likes?
Okay.
Let's be positive today, I guess. I don't know. All right. I'll go first. Coming at this book, I really liked the premise of the novel. I loved an idea of this sort of, like, tour around Europe, because Europe is something I'm very naturally interested in, so I wanted to read it. And then, like, the gay kind of road trip theme was also very interesting to me. I wanted to see how she was going to do that in a time period that was pretty hostile to homosexuality.
That's pretty much what I put. I like the setting.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just Europe, it's 18th century Europe, and the whole idea was different.
Yeah.
And so I like that.
I liked that she does include a lot of history about this time period, but I didn't feel like it was, like, obsessive, or it didn't bang me over the head with just too much information. She did a good job of kind of putting cultural bits in here and there. I didn't feel like it was a history book.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
Yeah. Do you have any other?
No.
I've got a couple more.
Go ahead.
I liked the twist that this book has. Not like the plot twist. I just mean the general view within which the conflict is presented in this novel. Like, you don't really read a lot of books about, like, alchemy or, like, science and chemistry in that kind of regard. I thought that was a unique context to write the characters in this book.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah. I thought that was really cool. And then lastly, I enjoyed her author's note in the back. Just kind of, I'm glad that the author's note exists because of the dislikes I have about this book. I like that she knew that certain readers might have an issue with this book, and so she made an effort to kind of call some of that to light. So we can talk about that a little bit more.
All right. So we're going to give her a rating, or are we going to... Because I don't think we gave a rating in our last podcast.
Did we not?
We did not.
Okay. I gave this book a 3, and for me a 3 is I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it, and I didn't hate it. It's kind of middle of the road, won't read it again, but in my line of work I wouldn't not recommend it. Yeah.
Okay. I also gave it a 3, but I'm being extremely generous. A 3 for me is not good. I don't. A 3.5 is like a meh. For me, a 3 means it's not good. And I'm being generous only because of the setting and because of the time period. Mm-hmm. And the idea. That's really it.
Yeah.
And we forgot to say that if you want to win a copy of Warcross by Marie Lu, keep listening to the podcast and you will find out at some point how you can win a copy.
Woohoo. Everybody likes free stuff. Yay. Anyway. All right. So we kind of have different ideas of what a 3 means, which is fine. This is just a solid 3 for me, like 3.25 or 2.75 or anything like that. So
you said 3.5 earlier today. What happened?
Did I? Oh, sorry. I don't remember doing that.
Yeah, you said 3.5.
Well, it's a 3.
Something must have happened. Okay.
Yeah, I just realized as I was kind of thinking about this book that I didn't like it enough to bump it up quite that high. Okay. All right, let's go into dislikes. first for me was characterization. This is the biggest thing
that would be number one on my list.
Yep, me too. I just did not connect with the characters despite the author's attempts and time, literally, that she takes in the book. The book is 500 pages to develop these characters. I just still didn't. No. I didn't click with the romance. No. I didn't click with the spunky, smart sister. I didn't click with Monty, sure as hell. Nope. And I'll go into that a little bit. But, yeah, characterization was an issue for me.
Before I start with my dislikes, I will say that in the last couple years, especially in the last year, I've become a much more critical reader. And I don't have time for tropes and stuff that I've read a million times. So if I have read that, I'm going to pick it out. I do notice that this book has a really high rating, and that's great for people who it's considered a fun read, but this is not a critical read as it could have been.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't have time for that. So, taking on what you're talking about, characters, I felt all of them were tropes. I don't have time for tropes.
I agreed. Yeah, I agree with that.
I kind of want to start with Felicity. I feel like here we have another plain Jane who doesn't want society life. She wants an education. How many times do I have to read this character? If you're going to have this character, please do something different with her. She's a little witty. She's a little bitchy. But, I mean, other than that...
She didn't bring anything new to the table for Felicity.
Nothing. And she kind of suffers from what I call the Hermione syndrome, which is where... just because she's read a book, now she knows everything. So she just happens to know about certain illnesses that happen upon the book, or
she just happens to have been She just happens to have been reading about alchemy.
No,
really.
At least Hermione had a library in the school, so when she didn't know something, she'd go to the library.
Well, the context of Hermione's education, or the context of Hermione's knowledge, made sense because they were at school.
Yeah,
this is just her natural interests. How many people have a natural interest in alchemy and then, guess what? The main conflict of the story needs alchemy to solve it.
Come on.
Yeah, it was a little bit... I had to suspend my disbelief on that. Bothered me. Yeah. Percy's trope was the most bothersome to me. He's a minority character, he's gay, and of course he's the, wise, gonna save the day character. And he's the foil to Monty's, hot-headed, privileged voice. I've read this a million times.
Yeah, Percy was boring as hell.
And I'm reading the reviews and everyone's like, I loved Percy. I couldn't tell you one thing about that boy other than his conflict and, his relationship with Monty.
Yeah.
And I didn't get anything from him.
Nothing.
Monty himself was a dislike that I pulled specifically. He's kind of a dope, and everyone else in his life saves him 98.3% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
That gets really old after a while, and also he was just a hard character to read. His moments of seriousness were great, and I kind of wish we had a little bit more of that, because I was reading some reviews, and one reviewer correctly pointed out that this book does have very dark elements that aren't really, it's not being brought up in the marketing. So I think some people will identify with some of that stuff, but it wasn't even enough to make Monty a real character.
No, he's a trope as well.
Yeah, he's just a jackass who has been able to hide his personal faults and fears behind his own privilege. It's annoying.
In the beginning of the book, he is a screw-up. His father wants him to run the family business, and his father's pressuring him to do something he doesn't want to do, and everybody is constantly calling him on his crap.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Which I'm sick of hearing, and then at some point he's going to grow, and exactly how he's going to grow. That's nothing new.
Right.
If you're going to have that trope, you need to add something special to him, and just making him a gay character in 17-something is not enough.
Yeah, I agree. This kind of goes along with characterization, but I felt like their development took way too long. I was 200 pages into the novel, which is almost halfway, before we really got to the main journey that these characters were going to take, physically and, more metaphorically through the book. 200 pages to develop your characters, to set them up for this journey? That's way too long. This book needed some editing.
Remember.
Oh my gosh. Like, why are we still talking about what happened at school? Find a different way to insert that back into the plot. Don't keep sitting there talking about it. And then the whole conflict between Percy and Monty was based off of a simple misunderstanding that they both could have fixed right there if they would have just stopped for a second to actually have a conversation.
Are you talking about the romance or the other thing?
The other thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. It bothered me. That was way too much of my time spent on their characterization, and I'm still not getting the sense of a strong development there. Mm-hmm. That bothered me.
Are we still on characterization?
Not if you don't have anything else.
I don't have anything else.
All right, go ahead.
I kind of want to, I don't know if it's the writing style. It's not necessarily a style, but
I didn't feel like she was a bad writer.
Oh.
I mean, no, like genuinely,
like
I was not
the words
sitting
on
there.
The page or
yes, and okay. I wasn't sitting there like rewriting her sentences in my head.
Oh no.
Which sometimes I do, and I find extremely distracting if the person is really not just a good. I felt like she was able to tell a good story.
Okay, so maybe that I was about to say storytelling was a problem, but you just said you liked it.
Well, I think I understand what you're saying because I was trying to sit here and be like, why didn't I like this book?
Well, I can tell you why I didn't like it. So, my problem, one of my big problems with the book is, well, I had several, and one of them is this box that they discover. And at some point, they realize that this box is not going to really help them, yet they stay in danger.
Yeah, that's
Why would you
true.
Purposely put yourself in danger when you find out that this box is not going to help you? This box has nothing to do with your life. It's not going to make you rich. You have no idea what's going to happen. And that was midway through. I'm like, no.
Well, every single character at some point thinks to themselves, maybe we shouldn't be here. And you're like, uh-huh. Like, yes. We can all, how do you not sense that the people, they get to Barcelona and they're staying with this family because they're trying to get information on this box. And this family has clearly got hella secrets.
And I love how they just conveniently overhear their conversation just to move the plot along.
I know. Yeah, that's a problem. So this is, maybe you're right in saying that her storytelling isn't the best because I thought she constructed good sentences. I liked her voice as a writer, if you will, but the storytelling had issues. The pacing had issues. The showing versus telling had issues. The sort of like kind of nuances of actually storytelling. That's a good way of saying that. Pacing was an issue of mine.
Oh yeah, it didn't need to be 500 and something pages.
No. I felt like there was lots of slow in between bursts of fast action.
Yeah.
And it was like, I caught myself skimming, and that's not something you want your reader to do. If a word / a section is in your book, make it count. Mm-hmm. That's what I love about Maggie Stiefvater.
Yeah, everything
matters.
And that's why her books, well, this last book was like 280 pages, but her other books are a little lengthier, but still. So along those lines, I felt like what's his name?
Well, his name is Henry Montague.
Percy.
Oh, okay.
Percy is, he's mixed in 17th century Europe, and, black people weren't the favorites around that time. But
you don't say. That was funny.
If Percy had been white, it would not have impacted the plot.
Absolutely.
There was no reason to make him. And I can understand if she's trying to, our teens are Americans, and most teens know about American slavery, but they may not know about European slavery and how all that. So put that into your story. Add something different, but just make him black just for some people to be like, oh my God, there's a Negro. And I can say Negro, I'm black. But just to have people say, oh my God, a Negro's in our midst. No. And that's really the only time his race affected anything.
Yeah, and sometimes I felt like that whole scene was in there for shock value.
Yeah.
Like, as a white person, that's very like, oh my God, like, don't use that as a suspense or shock value portion in your book. That's just not.
Yeah.
That's not classy.
That bothered me, and it was another thing.
That's a great point, though. You're right. Like, if he was any other race, it would not have
Yeah.
impacted the plot at all.
I think there's one thing about homosexuality, but I know you have something to say, so I'll say that.
Well, all right. So I brought up in my likes that I appreciated her author's note because I do like to know where the author's coming from when they write a book. I find that very interesting. Writing a book takes a lot of time, energy, mental capacity, and I want to know where you're coming from. So she puts it in there that, you know, her attitude with this author's note was very much sort of like a gay ally, and that she wanted to write this book to speculate on whether or not a gay couple could have a happy, fulfilling life in that time period, which was very openly hostile to homosexuality. It was a capital offense, so you could be put to death. We saw that happen with Oscar Wilde. He wasn't killed, but he was sent to jail, working jail for like 15 years, where he basically wasted away to nothing. Like, it was a serious, you didn't mess around with that. You understood the consequences of potentially, like, holding someone's hand in public or even displaying any affection outside of friendship. And so she says all of this in her author's note, which is very interesting if it's not something you already knew. And, like, I got the sense that she wanted this book to be kind of like an ode to this history that I think queer culture doesn't have, because it wasn't spoken about. But then when you read the book, I didn't get the sense of that seriousness.
I didn't even know that until you told me that
Right.
was in the author's note. I was like, what?
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
And she says, you know, exactly, it just, there was like a disconnect between her obvious care with this topic and how it was translated into the book.
Yeah.
So that really bugged me. So is that kind of along the lines of where you're...
It isn't, but I just think that, I mean, if you're going to have a book like this where it's clearly meant to teach teens something in a fun, unconditional way, and that's great. But if you're going to do that, then make it meaningful. So they have one conversation. He has one conversation with his sister about his homosexuality, and it is not anything new. Teens they know about homosexuality. They have friends and relatives, and if you're not going to add something to them that they don't know, like a feeling or how it feels to be at this time. He didn't even relate his story to the time period. It was just a general,
right.
You know, you got to add something new to that.
Right.
And he had like 1-page conversation with his sister, and that was it.
And even he and Percy are not very forthcoming about their own feelings towards each other. And so that's why, you know, the author's note kept coming to my mind as I'm reading this book, because for some reason I read that first. I don't know why I went to the back. And I felt like this book was more of like a fun fluff novel, and that's fine. There's place for that, but I was going into this with this idea that she was trying to do something with this book, and I didn't end up leaving with that sense.
I thought it was going to be a fun fluff novel, and as I got into it, I was like, oh no, she's trying to do something, and then she didn't.
Yeah.
And that was my problem.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't do anything with it. Well, we might as well just get into the romance.
Yeah.
Let's
do it. Didn't like it.
It was too formulaic.
Way too formulaic.
Exactly. And her unrequited love writing did not land at all.
No.
Like,
I didn't get that. No. Mm-mm.
It was unrequited. Like a faux unrequited love.
Yeah, they definitely loved each other.
Well, it's kind of like a Six of Crows, Kaz and Neige type of thing, where they both love each other, but they're too afraid to admit it, because then, you know, it could fall apart, or I'm not good enough for you, or there's always a reason.
Right, and this is where the discussion of the time period should have come in, because obviously one of them was trying to be like, we literally cannot do this.
And not to mention, one is black.
Right.
So you have two things stacked against you, and that never comes up.
Right, and let's be real. People at their core are survivalists. You're not going to do something that's going to put you at a double chance of probably ending up dead just because of an emotion. I know it's a very strong emotion, but again, this was a discussion that should have been had with the characters throughout the book several times, and it did not.
No.
And for some reason, again, I don't know if it was just the way that their romance was told, I didn't connect with it. I was confused. I was like, wait, do you have feelings for each other? Are you together? Are you not? I was confused because they're like, they're about to get into it in the like first 15 pages.
And then Percy pushes them away. And then here we come, the next awkward anger. Okay, how long is this going to take before we're friends again? Right. And then we end up mutually.
And then they get jealous if they see them showing anyone, even the opposite sex, affection. And it's like, I was just confused. I just felt kind of jerked around a little
bit. That's why I was like, the unrequited love writing was not done in a good way. So Percy is pushing him away.
Well, like, I felt like she meant it to be a slow burn. But
that's not how
I
got it.
No,
I got it as him, like I said, like a Kaz and an Edge, or I know you didn't read the Infernal Devices, but Tessa and I forgot his name. Not Jem, the other one. He purposely pushes her away because he knows that he's bad for her. Mm-hmm. But they don't get it on, and then he's like, "Oh no, stop!" and then ignores her. Like, if you're gonna do that, fine, but you know, at least give Percy's side. Is this told in Monty's point of view?
It's told in... Yeah.
Okay, so then
first person with Monty.
We're not going to get his side if it's told in first person.
And maybe that was why he fell so flat to me. Because Monty does have this kind of personality that overshadows everything else. Like, he does have a very outgoing, kind of strong personality. And Percy's much more meek. He's a lot... Because he's had to be. He's had to be more in the shadows and, you know, don't bring a lot of attention to myself, I guess. You know, he's got a lot of things stacked against him. And Monty has kind of had everything handed to him that he doesn't want, but he has a lot. Yeah. So...
See, if you're gonna have a love story like this, then it should either be dual perspectives or third person.
I probably would have liked that a lot
Percy
more.
At all.
Yeah.
And what he's thinking.
And even the sister, like, she has a strongish personality, but that still even fell. Mm-hmm. Not as flat, but, you know, because she was still much more even-tempered, I felt like. But anyway, someone in the Goodreads reviews was like, I'd like to read a book about her. I'm like, you know what, I could see myself enjoying that.
Not me.
Yeah. I'd give it a try.
I'll pass.
They're like, I know I'm advocating for a series, but yeah. So.
The other thing that bothered me, are we done with the romance?
Yeah.
Okay. I felt like Lee tried a little too hard. She had too many historical significances, so much so that she couldn't focus. So we have the Duke of Bourbon, which is a real character, and like, not characters, like a real person, not educating women. So we have Felicity's thing. We have there are some things that came up with Percy that is timely, and
you're leading up to the French Revolution.
Is that even mentioned?
Barely. But the Duke of Bourbon and all the, like, crap that they were trying to do to manipulate the French throne was a huge issue.
Well, I mean, maybe she didn't want that to be a focus, and that's fine. But I'm not done yet. So we have Percy has something going on that, like I said, it is not understood at this time, and it was a whole deal. So Percy has his own deal,
right,
and he's a minority. And then you have homosexuality. It's like so much stuff that she can't focus on a couple things.
Yeah.
So you're either going to make Felicity a prominent character because she's a woman and she can't do as much as her brothers, or you're going to focus on the romance and the race and the time period, or the Duke of Bourbon, or something. I
completely agree. It's a good point.
I think people who write historical fiction, they have so many ideas and they want to put it all in because they're excited, but you're setting yourself up for failure when you do that because you're not getting your message through.
Right.
So she just needed to edit.
Mm-hmm. I agree. This book was in serious need of an edit. I loved the premise, though, and that's what's so unfortunate. Like, a lot of people do not know what happened with the House of Bourbon, or even that they had such control in Europe. That was interesting to me. And again, she doesn't hit you over the head with this information. She puts it in when it's important. But it was a lot. Anything else to add?
I think I ripped it a new one thoroughly. I really, really wanted to like this book, too.
I did, too.
Really did.
The cover is awesome. I mean, It has everything it needs to be a good book. And it clearly is landing well with some people. This has like lots of reviews already for being a week and ahead of publishing. And so some people are getting it, some people are liking it, and that's fine. I can see a lot of our teens liking this.
I mean, I would recommend it. I would have loved to do this for like book club, but
yeah. There wasn't anything. Yeah, there's not really a lot to discuss here other than let's have a historical fiction discussion.
About touring.
Even the gay culture and the homosexuality issues are even
I can find
not
that in
really
another book.
issues. Exactly, it's
in a
not
better book.
It's not special to this book.
Yeah, that's a shame.
It is. I again, like her author's note, I love the idea of her peeling back the layers of like this group of people who do not have their culture written down in history because it was not considered moral, I'm using air quotes, or whatever. Like that's a whole group of people's history that is just not in existence. And she wanted to kind of approach that a little bit, but I just, that could have been so great.
Yeah.
That could have been so great. It didn't land with me, sadly.
No, me either.
Yeah.
So, like I said, if it had not have been set in the time period that it was set in, it probably would have got a 2. Like, I just did not. She got a star or a point. Yeah, a star just for the setting.
I enjoyed the setting a lot.
Otherwise, I literally did not enjoy anything. I didn't think it was funny. I didn't like any of the characters.
There was one scene that I thought funny, which was after he went to the bookstore. And the bookstore was like, or the book owner was like, "Do I look like a librarian to you?" Because he's trying to like ask him questions about the stupid box. And then there was another scene where they were like, Monty was explaining to Percy the story of Lazarus from the Bible in his own words, and just the irreverence of that scene was so great. That's it though. Like out of 500 pages, no, you got to give me a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you would like to win a copy of Warcross by Marie Lu, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we might be switching up our podcasting in the near future. So
look out for updates.
Yeah. Otherwise, we will catch you in the next podcast.